A fire, a stranger, and eyes that feared life more than death. The night was still until it wasn't. I had ridden fence that evening, too tired to eat, but when I stepped outside, the horizon glowed like a wound. Smoke rose beyond the dry ridge where my cattle never strayed, a patchy ground forbidden to me since the day I bought this lonely spread. I should have turned back inside, let it burn, but my boots kept moving. Maybe I was hungry for danger, or maybe I just wanted proof something still mattered to me. The air thickened the closer I got. By the time I reached the valley hollow, the blaze roared like a crowd of devils. A cabin stood there, half swallowed, beams collapsing under their own weight. I should have stopped at the tree line. Instead, I stepped into the furnace. That's when I saw her. She wasn't running, wasn't crying. She just sat there, a giant of a woman, shoulders as wide as a barn door, skin carved with scars that caught the firelight like old riverbeds. A beam had come down across her legs. She could have screamed for help. God knows the fire was loud enough to swallow it, but she didn't. She just stared at the flames licking closer, like she'd been waiting for this ending all her life. And in her eyes, hollow as mine in the mirror, I saw something I hated: recognition. I yelled at her to fight, to move, to do anything. She barely turned her head. She said, "Let it take me," quiet as prayer. Not Apache words, not English, just something between, enough I understood the meaning clear. For a heartbeat, I thought about obeying her, walking out, and letting the blaze write her last chapter. But I couldn't. Maybe because I knew what it was to lie down and let life bury you alive. So I dropped to my knees, splinters biting my hands, and heaved at the burning timber. Heat clawed my face, smoke stole my breath, but I pried until the damn thing shifted. She didn't even flinch when I grabbed her under the arms, just looked at me, eyes calm as if death was still the better option. The cabin gave one last groan, timbers bowing. I cursed, pulled with everything I had, and felt her body lurch free just as the roof came down behind us in a storm of sparks and ash. We fell hard in the dirt outside, her weight near crushing me. The fire swallowed the cabin whole, painting the night in orange fury. And there, with my chest heaving and my skin blistered, I realized I hadn't saved a stranger. I'd chained myself to her fate.
Save a stranger, inherit a wife, or her death. I didn't sleep that night, not a wink. She sat in my cabin corner, back pressed to the wall, saying nothing. I gave her water, bread, a blanket. She touched none of it, just stared at the dying fire like it was the only thing worth watching. Her silence was heavier than any words. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I'd jolt awake, half expecting to find her gone, or worse, standing over me. By dawn, my head throbbed and my nerves were raw. That's when I heard 'em. Hooves, more than a few. I stepped onto the porch, hand tight around my rifle. They came out of the dust in a slow line. 6 riders, rifles slung, faces carved hard as stone. At their center rode Taza, the old Apache elder, a man whose name I'd heard whispered with equal parts fear and respect. He carried himself like someone the land itself deferred to. They dismounted as one, the scrape of boots against dirt making my stomach knot. Taz's eyes found mine, then flicked to the cabin where she sat hidden inside. "You pulled her from fire," he said, in English thick with weight. "That is life debt. To balance, you take her as wife." I thought I'd misheard. The words rattled in my head like loose bullets. What? He didn't repeat himself, just stood there, waiting, as if the earth itself held its breath. His men shifted their grips on rifles, not threatening exactly, but reminding me the choice was thinner than paper. Inside, I felt my chest cave in. Marriage? Because I'd carried her out of a burning house? I'd done it to save a life, not to chain myself to one. But the way he spoke, I realized refusal wasn't just insult. It was sentence. For her, maybe for me. I glanced back inside. She hadn't moved. She sat where she had all night, still as stone, as though she expected this moment, maybe even welcomed it. I wanted to shout that this wasn't my burden, that a man shouldn't be shackled for a single act of decency. But when I opened my mouth, all that came was, "I need time." Taza studied me, long, dark eyes, measuring whether I was man or coward. At last gave a small nod. "One son. At dusk, tomorrow. Answer. Refuse her, and she dies with no name. Accept, and you both carry honor." Then he turned, swung into the saddle, and rode off with his men in slow thunder. The dust settled, and I stood alone, my gut turning. One son to decide if my life was mine or already bound to hers. And when I stepped back into the cabin, her eyes lifted to me at last. They didn't plead, they didn't thank, they just waited, as if she knew the weight of silence better than any verdict I could give.
"He should have let me burn." Morning stretched thin. I couldn't eat, couldn't sit. Every creak of the floorboards was too loud in the silence we shared. I took myself down to the creek, hoping the cold water might wash clarity into me. But she followed, silent, barefoot, tall enough to shadow me though the sun was high. I finally turned, anger spilling out sharper than I meant. "Do you care about any of this? About what your father demands of me?" Her jaw tightened, and for the first time her voice came, not soft, not broken, but flat as stone dropped in still water. "He is not my father." I frowned, the words stinging. She looked past me, to the flowing creek. "He leads, he commands, but blood was cut from me long ago." I pressed, heat rising in my chest. "Then what do you want? You want me to take you in? You want me to refuse and watch 'em kill you? Say something that's yours, for God's sake." Her gaze snapped back, and in it I saw years of wounds no fire could touch. "What I want?" She lifted her hands. In the daylight, the scars were clearer, long ridges burned and carved into skin by ritual knives. They carved until I was marked as curse. Then they turned away. My family, my people, all. Her words hit like a hammer. She should have been terrifying, a giant draped in scarred tissue. Yet all I saw was the cruelty of men who'd decided suffering was holy. "She should have burned," she said, voice low. "That would have been clean." The creek kept running, soft against the stones. I felt something inside me crack. Anger, pity, recognition of a wound that matched my own, though mine was hidden deeper. "I don't believe that," I said, though my throat ached with doubt. She studied me long. "Then you are a fool." We stood like that, water rushing between us. I realized no one had ever asked her what she wanted. She'd never even been given the right to want. "I'll ask again," I said, my voice unsteady. "What do you want now?" Her lips parted. Breath caught like it had nowhere to go. For a moment, I thought she might speak the first true desire of her life. But before she could, the sound of hooves carried through the trees. Not one, not two, many. And her head turned sharp, eyes wide not with fear, but with recognition. And I knew the time for choices had ended. Someone else was coming to make 'em for us.
5 armed men, 1 unarmed rancher, 1 towering curse. The riders broke the tree line fast. 5 warriors, faces streaked with ash, braids snapping in the wind. They reined up sharp, horses steaming, eyes fixed on her like hunters finally cornering their quarry. I stepped in front of her without thinking, just a fool with empty hands. My rifle sat leaned against the cabin back up the trail, out of reach. All I had was my body, which wasn't near enough. The one in the lead spat to the side, then barked words I couldn't catch. She answered back in Apache, her voice like stone grinding stone. He laughed, then slid from the saddle, blade flashing as he drew. The others followed, 5 against 1, and the one wasn't even me. "I stay behind me," I muttered, though it was madness. I felt her eyes on my back, steady, unflinching. One of 'em snarled in broken English, "She is not woman, she is curse. We finish what fire did not." My gut twisted. I'd heard men use words like that before, about outlaws, about the weak, about anyone they needed to make less than human before spilling blood. Rage surged hot through me, burning clearer than fear. I squared myself, spreading my arms like I could cover her with nothing but my width. "You'll cut me down first." They hesitated. Not much, but enough. My voice didn't carry threat, only truth, and maybe that unsettled 'em. Still, 5 blades against bare hands left me with little more than bluff. The leader stepped closer, sneer curling his lip. His knife caught the sun, a shard of light pointed right at me. I braced myself to die stupid, but before I could breathe again, the ground shifted behind me. She moved. For a woman who'd spent hours refusing life, she rose now like a storm, shadows spilling long. Her scars caught the daylight, her frame towering over me and every man in that semicircle. She didn't need words. Her silence alone made 'em falter. The warriors froze, blades still raised, but their eyes flickered. Not with fear, not yet, but with doubt. I realized then I wasn't shielding her anymore. I was standing between a pack of killers and the very force they'd taught themselves to dread. And she was ready to show them why.
She saved a child's life and was cursed for it. The standoff broke when Taza himself rode in from the ridge, voice like thunder. With a single command, he scattered the 5 warriors, their blades vanishing as if shame alone drove them back. He didn't look at me, only at her, and she bowed her head, silent as before. But peace lasted less than a day. That afternoon, I heard screams down the road. A settler wagon had tipped in the rut, one wheel splintered, the whole frame leaning heavy on a child pinned beneath. His mother clawed useless at the wood, screeching. Men shouted, pulling ropes. Nothing budged. Before I knew it, she was there, nownish, moving with a purpose I hadn't seen in her yet. She shoved aside the men, dropped to her knees, and pressed both scarred palms against the wagon's beams. Her shoulders bunched, muscles like braided iron stood out beneath her skin. With a guttural sound, half cry, half command, she lifted. The wagon groaned, wood snapping, wheels biting deeper in the dirt, but she held it, veins in her neck standing out like ropes, long enough for the boy to crawl free, gasping, into his mother's arms. Then the wagon crashed down, dust billowing. Nownish staggered back, breath ragged, chest heaving. And in that heartbeat, I thought maybe, just maybe, the crowd would see her worth. Instead, the mother recoiled, clutching her son close. "Monster!" she hissed, spitting the word like venom. "Godless thing!" The boy's eyes were wide with awe, but her fear drowned him. Others muttered, crossing themselves, stepping back like her touch carried plague. I wanted to tear into 'em, to scream that she'd done what none of them could. Instead, I just stood, fists clenched, heat choking me worse than fire ever had. She didn't argue, didn't fight the word. Her face slipped back into that mask I knew too well. Resignation, the look of someone who expected nothing but rejection. And I understood then, word of this would spread. Fear is faster than truth. By sundown, every settler within 30 miles would hear of the scarred giant who lifted wagons, a cursed woman who should have burned. By nightfall, I knew what must come. We couldn't stay. I looked at her across the fire's glow, her eyes fixed on the flames like the night I'd found her. She was already an exile, and if I stayed by her side, I'd be one too. But leaving meant losing the last roots I had left in this world.
Marriage, decided by firelight and a mob's approach. By the next sunset, trouble came right. I'd heard 'em before I saw 'em. Settlers, half drunk on rumor, spurred by the fear that spreads faster than cholera. Their voices rose over the dusk wind, calling her devil, witch, curse. I stood on the porch with rifle in hand, but even I knew it wouldn't matter. Too many, too quick. And once a mob tastes blood in its teeth, reason don't stand a chance. Nownish sat inside, still as stone, as though she'd already accepted the rope they'd bring. I couldn't bear it. Not again. When they reached my fence line, torches flaring, I stepped forward. My voice cracked, but carried. "She is my wife." The words shocked even me. They rang louder than gunfire. The mob froze, muttering, glancing at one another. Binding under Apache law was no small thing. It wasn't romance, it was blood oath, survival tied between two lives. If I claimed her, I wasn't just shielding her. I was making myself her mirror. Her curse would be mine. From the corner of my eye, I saw her rise inside the cabin. For the first time since I'd dragged her from fire, something flickered across her face. Not joy, not disbelief, just a quiet relief, as though the axe she'd braced for had turned, if only slightly. The crowd roared, spitting, some raising rifles, others swearing we'd both hang for it.
Their rage was deafening. But I didn't back down. I stepped to the fire pit in the yard, cut my palm with my own knife, and held it out. She came forward, towering, scarred, hands trembling, as she pressed her cut palm to mine. Blood to blood. In that moment, before God, men, and the cursed stars above, we were bound. The settlers howled. One hurled a bottle that shattered at my feet. Another cocked his rifle. Still, I held fast, my hand swallowed in hers, the bond sealed. Whatever my life had been before, it was over. And as the torches closed in, I knew exile was no longer a threat. It was a promise.
You want her, you go through me. The night stank of kerosene and rage. Settlers circled my yard, rifles and torches shaking in their hands. Some spat scripture, others curses, all of it boiling into the same demand, her blood. I stood at the gate, palms raw where her hand had bound to mine. My voice was steady, though my knees wanted to buckle. She's my wife, that makes her my blood. You want her, you go through me. Laughter, jeers, the sound of gun hammers clicking back. I thought that would be the end of me, of us both. But before the first trigger squeezed, hooves thundered from the dark. A badge caught the firelight. The territorial marshal, coat flapping, horse lathered. He rode straight into the mob, pistol raised. His voice cracked like a whip. Stand down! Men who moments ago had murder in their eyes faltered under that badge. Some cursed, some lowered their guns slow, but the air still brimmed with hate. The marshal turned to me, then to her. He saw our cut palms, the blood bond still fresh, and his jaw clenched tight. He didn't call it false, didn't deny it. Law was law, even here at the edge of it. She's your wife. That spares her tonight, but you'll find no peace here, not in this town, not in this valley. You want to keep her alive, you ride west. You don't come back. The words cut deeper than any blade. This land was my last tether, my ranch, my father's graves, the ghosts of a family I'd already lost. Behind me, Nowndish stood tall, but I felt the tremor in her breath. For once, she wasn't shielding herself. She was shielding me. The mob simmered, grumbling, but the marshal's badge held them at bay. For now, I looked at my home, its windows glowing with the firelight of torches that wanted nothing but ruin. I knew the truth before I even answered him. Exile wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only path left.
Two outcasts head west, not for love, but for survival. We left before dawn. No farewells, no words, just the creak of saddles and the crunch of hooves on frost-hardened dirt. Behind us, my ranch shrank into shadow. Home turned hostile ground. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Days bled into weeks. We rode west through canyons where no rumor reached, across plains wide enough to swallow every voice that had ever cursed us. She didn't speak much, but when she did, it was plain truth. Directions to water, a warning about wolves,
or a wordless gesture to rest. Her silence wasn't empty anymore. It was partnership. In a valley thick with pine and spring water, we stopped. The place felt untouched, waiting for us. I cut logs, blistering my hands raw, while she lifted beams a team of oxen would have struggled with. Side by side, we raised a cabin. No priest, no town, no witnesses but the mountains. When the roof was set, I caught her one morning bent over fresh soil, planting seeds with care I hadn't thought she owned. Sunlight spilled across her scarred shoulders, making them seem less a mark of shame, more a map of survival. I felt something stir in me then, something I'd thought the fire in my life had long ago burned out. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but respect, kinship, the rarest kind of peace. At night we sat by our own fire. She asked me once, her voice quiet as fallen ash, "Why did you not let me burn?" I thought long before I answered. Because I'd already been burned, and I knew what it was to wish for an end. Her eyes glistened, catching the flames. For the first time, she didn't look away. We weren't husband and wife the way storybooks tell it. We were something else, two broken souls refusing to die as the world demanded. Exile had stolen everything I thought I was, but in that valley, with her, I began to see what we might still become, not out of choice, out of defiance. And sometimes that's enough.